Hello and welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast. My name is John, and we are back to celebrate the 90s, power of the 90s style here, and we're going to be talking about 1995, a super important, very big year in Star Wars in the 90s. So joining me this morning, as always, is Ryan.
Morning.
And we are excited to have a special guest with us today, which is Jeff, the Metal Mando. What's up, Jeff?
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate that. I actually was talking to you or messaging you one time where I got turned on to your podcast because of the power of the 90s, and I just watched everyone back to back and kind of commented how much I liked that, and said, hey, I'd love to kind of chime in and give some thoughts on these upcoming years because this era meant so much to me, and I really appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot.
Oh yeah, not a problem. We're excited to have you here. We're definitely looking forward to hearing about your expertise in this era, the toys for sure, and you've already started schooling us a little bit on some of these reference books, which is what we're going to start out with. So,
all right.
Yeah, it should be good. It should be a lot of fun. So yeah, let's start talking about these books from this era, specifically the nonfiction reference books, which are kind of our favorite, I think, from this era. So the first one on our list here is From Star Wars to Indiana Jones, the best of the Lucasfilm archives, which is a book I really need to pick up, but I don't actually have. Ryan, did you have this one? Do you have this?
I don't.
Okay. All right. So Jeff, you do have this one, right?
Yes, I do have this.
Okay, there it is. Nice. Yeah, I've seen that one around. I've been meaning to get it.
Too, yeah.
I know it's talked about as being a really great book. So can you tell us a little bit about that one, Jeff? And
the first thing is funny is there's actually the price tag on here. I got it for $4.99.
Yeah, I see that.
Clearance.
Is that like Borders or where's that from?
I think I got this a long time ago from like a Costco type of place.
Oh, okay.
I actually can't remember where I bought this now that I think about it. But
okay.
Yeah, I remember seeing this for $4.99. Well, I got to pick that one up.
Yeah, that's a deal.
Yeah, obviously the interesting thing is, half the book is dedicated to Indiana Jones, which is kind of cool. But yeah, back in this time frame, I was just thirsting for any kind of information, getting back into Star Wars and just being able to have this kind of the artwork here, this concept artwork and everything. Yeah, just kind of loving all this. It's kind of, there's similar books. You can see like pages here. The artwork, the concept artwork, the stuff, there's been a lot of books released later on that have, this type of stuff. But this is kind of the first time I ever really got to see props, concept art, things like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and at this stage of the game, we're even sometimes seeing like video tours and walkthroughs of the Lucasfilm archives and stuff like that. And like you said, Jeff, there's been more books of that nature released and stuff. So, but this sounds like it was a kind of groundbreaking in revealing some of that stuff for the first time. Is that a Steve Sansweet book, or who is the author of that one?
This is. I did not look for that. It's not a Sansweet book. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
Yeah, guys, sorry, I'm not seeing.
Okay. Right, well, maybe the archives themselves put that one together, or maybe it was a team effort. Kind of thing. Oh, Joe Costa could be.
Yeah, I should have checked that out before. I wasn't even thinking about that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I was just curious. I know we've got at least one or two Sansweet books coming up. I think. Do we, or maybe we don't? I don't know.
We got some Kevin J. Anderson, some KJA.
KJA. Okay.
Well, guys, it does say it's written by Mark Vaz.
Okay.
Have you?
No, I don't think so.
And a name I'm not going to be able to pronounce correctly, Shinji Hata, maybe? So, yeah, so those are the two guys that wrote it. So.
Okay.
Huh.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I will definitely look to pick that one up. And either hardcover or paperback. I guess it's in both. So if I can grab either one, I'll take a look. I like to go to Half Price Books and find some of these books from the 90s. A good way to do it. So, or Amazon or eBay or whatever that works too. So I will put that one on the short list.
Yeah. I'm sorry. At the time, this was like you said, groundbreaking. But the books that came out afterwards, which you're going to probably get to, the archives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard of that one or.
Yeah. Is that the kind of the big set, the archives book, or?
There's one. It's kind of has a gold and black cover, and it's like has a slipcase, and you pull the book out.
Okay.
And there's one called The Vault, which came out from Sansui later on, similar to this, but like you said, this was the first one. Chronicles. I'm sorry, the Chronicles.
Okay. Right.
At the time, it had a $150 price tag, which was crazy when it was first released. And then I got that on clearance for about $80 after a couple years. That's the ultimate Star Wars book as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I can picture it. Is it like, it's not like a perfect rectangle shaped box? Is it
much taller? Yeah, much taller than a normal book.
And does it have like C-3PO's head on it?
No, it's just gold with. I wish I could pop out and get it real quick.
I think I can picture it. I think I can.
Take me about 20 seconds. You want me to grab it?
Sure. Yeah, you could do that if you want to grab it.
All right, go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I'll just talk about that Vault book real quickly then while he's grabbing the other one. I don't know what year that released. Probably post 90s. I think it was sometime in the mid 2000s, but I don't know if you've seen that one or not, Ryan, but it has like reproductions of a lot of reproductions of letters and like stickers and just all kinds of different little, I don't know, memorabilia and things like that, like tickets to press screenings and things like that. So that book is really, really cool. And I actually got that as a gift from a student, which was super generous and really nice.
Wow.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, I got this for Christmas a few years ago, and it's just been in my closet ever since. And I never looked at it." And I was like, yeah, that's like, then he gave it to me and I was so excited because that's an incredible book.
Nice.
I know
I was just talking
about
the Vault book, Jeff, which I do have.
Yeah.
That book is really great, but
going a little off track here. That's not 95, but yeah, this is the one here, guys.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Absolutely incredible.
Okay. And it's got like the TIE fighter
you see how it kind of
window type thing. Yeah.
And then the book slides out.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So there's that, and then this thing will blow you away just because it's just such high quality and everything. But it covers. It's like a visual museum. Just unbelievable.
Wow. Nice. Okay. Yeah, I will have to put that one on the list too. Although that might be a little bit more of
it's pricey
pickup. Are you checking it out?
Yeah, it's now? $72 on Amazon. Still.
Okay. That sounds like it's worth it though. Sounds like it's worth it. All right, cool. Well, let's move on to our next book on the list here, which is The Essential Guide to Characters. And this is a book that I think has been updated many times probably since then. There's a lot of editions of this one. And I think I have some of those, but I don't have this 1995 version of the book. Jeff, do you have this one?
Yeah, I could not find that one for some reason. I know I have it, but yeah.
Okay, looks like Ryan's got it.
Yeah, I don't think I have the 1995 version though. Mine. Oh no, mine is the 95 one. Yep.
That cover looks the same.
Yeah. No, this is the 1995 copy. Cool. Oh, and I opened up right to two great pages here. We have Lobaka.
Okay.
And General Krixmadine, who's going to come up in conversation a little bit later here. So yeah, this book rules. I love all the Essential Guide books. Those were, some of my favorites from like the 90s and early 2000s.
The funny thing is, guys, is I never actually bought any of this stuff in 95.
Oh yeah.
I went back. I was always flipping through all those Essential Guides in the bookstore. I wasn't really back into Star Wars, but every time I saw something, I kind of want to check it out. But we'll talk about the figures. That's what really got me back into it. But all these books, I went back and bought these after the fact, like around maybe 96 or 97.
Yeah. That's absolutely the case for me, and I think probably for you too, Ryan. Like, a lot of this stuff I've really been picking up like in the last couple of years. But I did have, some of these things. I think I talked about on the last episode the encyclopedia or the guide to the Star Wars universe books that I loved. And I have a few of them, but yeah, definitely not.
I bought most of mine in the prequel era. I would say, like, especially leading up to episode 1, like hype there, where I just wanted to know everything about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And yeah, around that era is when I bought most of mine.
Nice. Yeah, and it looks like that that Essential Guide to Characters book too probably has a lot of material from the West End game stuff and that sort of thing. I could tell just by those images that those.
Yeah, the art reminds me a ton of
the stuff developed for the West End
books. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm really embarrassed to say that I don't have this next book, but I definitely want to grab it. The Illustrated Star Wars Universe. And this is one written by Kevin J. Anderson and features obviously a lot of artwork from Ralph McQuarrie. I don't know if it's got Joe Johnston and, other artists in there too, or if it's all McQuarrie, but
yeah, it is all McQuarrie.
It's all McQuarrie. Okay. And he produced some new pieces for this book too, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, that one sounds pretty great.
You mentioned Joe Johnston. Did you guys ever pick up those old scrapbooks from the original trilogy? It's called the Star Wars Scrapbook.
Oh, yes, I think I do have that.
Yeah, that's the first Star Wars related thing I ever received as a kid. I got that for Christmas. So that was a pretty special one, and I still have it. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, that's. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, sort of tell me a little bit about this, the McQuarrie pieces in here, and kind of the layout of this book, since you guys have it, and ridiculously, I don't have it. What's it look like?
There's actually a lot of text in here, more than you think, along with all the artwork, which is pretty cool if you really want to deep dive into the concept of, how he was what he was thinking about developing all these pictures and ideas. It's artwork you've probably seen here and there all the time. My favorite one, and I highlighted this, is, I don't know if you can see this, but it's concept art of the Gorax.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Can you see that? Peeking over the ledge there, and that's one of my favorite pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's especially in this book, my favorite picture.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. And what's striking about this book is it has, you see a lot of the the more, I don't know, there's some of those McQuarrie pictures you see a lot. Like you see the showdown between like Luke and Vader, and you see like the early Chewbacca and stuff, like those you see a lot. But what I really like about this book is it has a lot of like his creatures and stuff, like the one Jeff was just showing. And then I love his Wampa, which is like terrifying looking. Like
it's so scary. Use the same word. Yes.
And I love seeing those. Like I feel like, McQuarrie obviously ended up being very successful as like a sci-fi artist, but like I can picture like an alternate timeline where like he's doing concept art for like Alien or something at the same time. Like that would have been pretty cool too.
Here's how high quality it is. Check out this 2-page layout of some concept art for looks like they're trying to enter Cloud City. 2 pilots right there. Oh, wow. See that?
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man, I really need to pick that up for sure.
It's super cheap too.
Is it?
Yeah, I got a copy shipped for less than $10.
Oh, nice. Okay, I will get on that right away then. I know there's been some more comprehensive, I guess, maybe McQuarrie books and collections put out in the last couple of years that were pretty expensive.
The box set.
Yeah.
With like about $200 for the box set.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Really, I'll never own that.
Yeah. Probably not in the cards for me to get that. Although I feel real dumb too, because a couple times, the last 2 celebrations at least, I've gone by the booth that's selling like signed McQuarrie prints and stuff. and haven't picked any of those up. And like I've had them in my hands, ready to buy them at both celebrations. Didn't grab them, and I think they're running low on that stuff because obviously there's a limited number of those, and they're not going to last forever. So
how much does a signed McQuarrie print go for?
Well, there's different sizes and stuff. Like there's smaller ones, like something like this, and those are like $50 maybe.
Oh,
$50. And then there's posters that are a couple $100. I mean, there's all kinds of different.
Yeah.
So, but
maybe this will be the celebration.
Maybe. Hopefully they still have some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are going to Chicago, both of you?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. We're gonna see you there.
I have never been to a celebration.
No.
Yeah. Me neither.
And I live in Florida. I live close to Orlando, a 4-hour drive. I didn't even go to that one.
Oh,
just money, getting time off of work and stuff just didn't work out. So
yeah, it's a big commitment. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
So Chicago's not planning on Chicago.
No, I won't be attending. No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll try to keep you up to speed on what's going on.
Sure.
We'll be there. So, I don't know if I told you or not, but I'm only an hour and a half away from Chicago, so that's an easy one for me. Yeah. Yep. So, cool. All right. Well, our last sort of reference book here is the Star Wars Technical Journal, which I'm kind of paging through now. We didn't have this one in the notes, and Jeff pointed out that it was missing. So we've got that one. This one is from author is Shane Johnson. And this book is great. Lots of fold out sort of like blueprints and schematics and things like that. A lot of text in here too. And it's a great looking book for sure.
Yeah, the cool thing about this is definitely the fold outs. Like you said, it almost looks like blueprints of everything.
Yeah. Yep. And this is, one of the reasons that I might probably talk about it on every show, but one of the reasons we do this is because it's just the power of the 90s. I mean, is that it's just so much fun to kind of look at like what was Star Wars like in 95 and sort of like, or in the 90s and what was it like to be a Star Wars fan at that time? So I think, this is obviously a period in which there was a lot more happening in Star Wars by the time you get to 95, but a lot of it was sort of expanding what we already knew and kind of doing deep dives into the original trilogy or taking those characters and writing new stories about them from the original trilogy. And so it would be a few more years, obviously, before we get new stories from the maker himself anyway. So I think like at this time there was a lot of, I mean, there still is, but there was a lot of this kind of thing where it's like, really, let's look at every sort of device and vehicle and do these blueprints and schematics and really get into detail on that. And I remember at this time in 95, it was, I'd watch the movies on VHS all the time. And, but having these kinds of books that, why is it called a TIE fighter? Twin ion engine. Okay. Interesting. And then like learning about how they operated and how they were designed and all that stuff was really cool. Or to see and hear like how a lightsaber works, and the design of a lightsaber and stuff like that. The internals of it is just really cool.
Yeah, something that I'm thinking about now is it would be interesting, and I don't think we are definitely not the people equipped to do this, but to find like in the equivalent time frame for Star Trek, like the time between I guess Trek kept going because there were movies, but I also remember before I ever saw like Star Wars blueprints, I remember seeing like the Enterprise blueprint books and stuff at stores, or maybe it was around the same time, but I wonder who kind of did that first. And I think it ended up being like a kind of symbiotic thing where people just got interested in that stuff. But I don't know, like that was definitely of the era.
Yeah, I'll probably repeat this a lot, but things like this technical journal, just, creating that information and being able to, like you said, find out why this was made this way or what the background of this certain character, just that's what really attracted me in all these things, and being able to add that information that, just expanding upon everything from the movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we had 3 movies. That was it. And so if you wanted to spend more time in Star Wars, and which we all did, you needed stuff like this. And we still do. I mean, we get tons of books like this, obviously, now. But there's a special feeling to them from that era because, we just had less, and everything was so concentrated on those first 3 movies. So pretty cool time, and they were definitely really exciting. I mean, same way I felt about Star Wars Insider too, which I think I talked about on the last episode as well. But going into a bookstore and finding a Star Wars Insider, it was like, oh my God, here's 90 pages or 100 pages or whatever of this magazine that I can just soak up, Star Wars, and have that all that material was really exciting. So
yeah.
No, go ahead, John.
I had a couple things that you might find interesting. The technical journal, not to be confused with the technical journals, the magazines that came out in 93 and 94. And Ryan, I believe you have one of those. There was a technical journal for Tatooine, the Rebel Forces, and the Imperial Forces.
I don't have any of those, actually. I think we maybe mentioned them, but are those like the popular mechanics looking ones?
They were made by Starlog.
Okay. Yeah.
And you put one up on the screen there at one point.
You do have
you didn't even know what it was. I remember you saying it was like some odd thing you picked up.
That's probably likely.
Okay, here's the other interesting thing about this technical journal. Those magazines were actually they took those and put them into this hardcover journal. Parts of those magazines, so.
Okay. So this is like reprinting material from those.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, I took a lot of that and incorporated into this hardcover book.
Oh, yes,
exactly.
Here it is.
Exactly.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I remember thumbing through those all the time at the bookstores in the mall. Never actually bought one of those though.
Yeah, this is something my wife picked up for me like a year ago at like just a used bookstore somewhere for like $2, and I didn't know that this was reintegrated into the big book. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Huh.
And I also wanted to bring up Starlog. You guys were into the Starlog magazine, weren't you? Trying to get information that way too. Because every once in a while they'd have a Star Wars special issue, and those were kind of cool at the time too.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like a lot of times it was like choosing between getting a Starlog or a Fangoria.
Yep.
at the bookstore, and I have to say I did kind of lean more towards Fangoria at the time.
That is so funny. I think everybody that bought Fangoria bought Starlog. They were kind of
Oh yeah, totally. 2 branches of the same tree, sort of thing, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
and those were great. So, but yeah, no, I definitely was scoping out the Starlog magazines at that time too, for sure.
I think for me, like my monthly source of Star Wars news was probably more Wizard magazine at this time, because I was more into the comic side of things. And then later Toy Fair, once they launched that, which I believe was around this time, because I mean, early Toy Fair magazine was very focused on Star Wars figures, because that's kind of what brought the adult collecting boom. And we'll get into that later, but
Ryan, I have every one of those Toy Fair magazines.
Nice. They're so good.
Oh, nice.
So good.
The guys, in 95, there was a couple action figure magazines were actually around. Tomart's Action Figure Digest. Remember that? And Lee's Action Figure.
Was that more of a price guide type thing though, or was it
price guides? Yeah, they were actually price guides. Tomart's had some articles, but Lee's was just straight up price guide.
Price guide, right.
But I love the price guides. For some reason, I was just infatuated with not infatuated, but just wanted to know what everything was worth.
Yeah,
so I got really into that,
Sure.
I have a Toy Fair #1 here, with an AT-AT on the cover, and it looks like Toy Fair #1 came out in September of 97,
right.
And so that's quite a few years after those Star Wars figures launch. Not quite. It's a couple years after the Star Wars figures launch, but I kind of associated them with like the same time period. But I never really saw like the price guides and stuff until like the value of figures until Toy Fair outside of going to like my local comic shop. So I wasn't really aware. Like I was aware that there were those comic guides for prices, like, parallel to Wizard, but I had no idea about there being toy price guides at that time.
I absolutely thumb through the Wizard magazines all the time for the price guide part of it.
Oh, yeah.
I think, wasn't Toy Fair, wasn't the same company? Wasn't that an offshoot of Wizard?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's right up here. First issue from Wizard.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that's kind of a time capsule, is to go back and look at price guides. Not that I've really done that, but it sounds like something I would be into, is just to like sort of look at one of those price guides from the era and sort of say like, well, what was Return of the Jedi Gamorrean Guard worth in 1995, sort of thing. So
totally.
that would be fun. Yeah. Okay, well let's move on to we're going to talk just for
John. You're gonna kill me, but I got one more. You probably don't want to see this.
No,
if you don't mind. I don't spend a lot of time on this, but
no problem.
I messaged this to you when I direct message you, the Star Wars Galaxy magazine.
Ooh,
oh yes.
Nice.
And I thought these were actually a lot better than Star Wars Insider at the time.
Yeah, that's right. And I was thinking that was just about the Galaxy cards
trading
from
cards,
Topps. But
this one here came out in late '94.
Okay,
so that's why I mentioned that to you. That's your '94.
Yes, you got to clean up something we missed there and bring that up.
Yeah, just this is it's a lot of almost fan fiction. A lot of authors would go on the take characters and give a lot of background. And here's one called The Crystal Star, and that's like a little 4-page of fan fiction there.
I've actually read that. I've read that book, The Crystal Star.
Oh, you know what? This one actually says a book excerpt. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't really. I think did we bring that one up last?
I think we talked about it. It was a '94 book.
'94 book, and I don't actually remember much about it, but I did read that one from the library back in the day. So,
see, just some little short comics strips here. It's all kinds of neat stuff in these magazines. And in '95, they released 4 of these.
Yes,
there's that one there. I remember seeing that.
That one I definitely remember. I guess maybe I remember the card too, and that's why I'm remembering that cover. But I definitely remember seeing these.
Really cool. Sorry to interrupt you. They have really cool posters that you pull out. Every single one of them had a poster. Just like here's one. Just there's all kinds of different kind of aliens on a poster.
Oh, that's cool. That actually looks like, is that advertising the Essential Guide book? It looks like. The Essential Guide.
It does say The Essential Guide to Star Wars Aliens is what this is titled. So yeah.
Nice. So do you have like a whole run of that magazine then, Jeff? It looks like it's in.
I have all of them. I just picked out the ones from '95 to show you guys. There's
whoa, that cover.
Yeah.
I wonder who the artist of that cover. It looks.
And then here's the other one from '90.
Oh wow.
5.
Nice.
Yeah, I think there was only 13 of these, and it came out every 3 months, I believe.
So that just ran for a couple years then, huh? 3 years or so.
Yeah.
Nice.
It also actually turned into Star Wars Galaxy Collector magazine. You remember that?
I don't think I do. Actually.
That I don't know.
That was another big, kind of a Toy Fair's rival for a while. Around '97, that's why there's only 13 issues of this. It turned into Star Wars Galaxy Collector magazine. And then it just focused all on just collecting and nothing else. So they kind of changed their focus a little bit.
Nice.
For a lot. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to try to track some of those down as well then. So when was that? About '97, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I think the popularity of Toy Fair they probably wanted to change what they were doing to take advantage of that, the whole collecting boom. So
yeah. John, real quick before we move on, just to answer your question from earlier about what a Gamorrean Guard figure was worth. This is 1997, so we can get into this more in 2 episodes. But a complete on card Gamorrean Guard was $25.
Okay.
In 1997, and a loose Gamorrean guard was $8.
Okay.
From the Return of the Jedi series, so
not bad. Now I'm curious what those are worth in 2018, but
on card a lot more.
yeah, for
loose,
sure.
Man, I've been finding a lot of loose original Kenner figures for like really cheap lately.
Yeah,
I've started digging in a little bit just because I've been finding them at great prices, like $5. It's pretty cool.
The vintage or
the vintage.
Yeah, I bought about 70 of those figures in one shot from some guy I saw in Lee's Action Figure Price Guide. Actually, he had a full-page ad. Some guy in New Jersey, and I got about 60 of those or whatever for $110. So.
Oh my goodness!
That's how I got kickstarted my collection for the vintage, and I went and acquired all the more expensive ones later on. I'm still missing 7 of them. The usual ones, Man and. Some of the Ewoks. So
the Boba Fett with the rocket.
Well, everybody's missing that one. Yeah, but yeah,
there's like
except
3.
for like 3 people. Yeah, right.
Nice. So he has them all.
Yeah,
John, I had one more thing to show you here. Like some of these books that came out, you said you didn't read some of the novels and from earlier in the '90s, and as you guys go on, this right here, The Essential Reader's Companion by Pablo Hidalgo. See, I never got around to reading the novels, but this book summarizes every single novel and comic ever put out in the expanded universe era.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. So something to think about if you want to know about all these novels but don't have the time to read them. This thing will catch you right up.
Yeah, I think we definitely, I at least definitely need to get one of those as we continue doing these Power of the 90s episodes,
right.
Because I'm not going to be reading all these novels at this point.
Yeah,
so,
actually, that'd be a great source book.
It would be very good for us to have one of those to take a look at. So I'll definitely pick those up. It was fun. I was just thinking about this the other day, Ryan, when we did the 90, 91 and 92 episodes, like there weren't too many books. So it was kind of fun to try to read those, and especially, what was our buddy's name?
Triclops?
Triclops, yeah. To read about him and the glove of Darth Vader and all that. But it's too hard to keep up with all that at this point.
Not happening at this point.
Yeah, right.
You actually had me laughing out loud when you were going over that book, how bizarre it was.
It was pretty fun, yeah. So, but yeah, so speaking of, we do have a list of Legends books that were released in 95. I'll just run through the titles, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about Tales from Mos Eisley, because that one is you got Triclops on there?
I got Triclops from, he's one of the essential characters in 1995.
He's absolutely an essential
2018
character.
As well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we had
Snoke.
Okay, yeah, the Snoke of his era, the Snoke of 1995. So we have Legends books here. Ambush at Corellia, which is part of a trilogy that came out in February. Children of the Jedi came out in April. Young Jedi Knights Heirs, that was in June. Junior Jedi Knights, The Golden Globe, in October, and then also a novel called Dark Saber in November. So those are the ones that we have here listed as being books that came out in 95 that are now considered Legends books. You can tell just from the titles, it seems that there's a lot of emphasis on the Solo Skywalker Organa kids there, I think. Sort of seems like where things were going at that time. I think so anyway. But the big one maybe that is worth talking about for a few minutes here, and that we probably all kind of remember at least a little bit, is Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. Ryan, I think maybe you were reading up on that a little bit before doing the episode?
I bought a copy of it.
Okay, that's all? Just
Yep, that's about as far as we went.
Alrighty, okay.
To start,
yeah.
All right, well, that's a start.
About that book, I used to hang out at the bookstore a lot. Yeah, I definitely remember picking that one up and reading, spending a half hour reading one or two of the stories I remember. But I never did buy the book. So, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I read a bit of that at the time, or probably read all of it at the time. I haven't reread it recently, but I did read that one at the time it came out, and I think a lot of people read that one, and the cantina is something that has fascinated Star Wars fans, I think, since 77, since the movie came out. So the idea of being able to sort of have this book, this collection of short stories that are kind of telling us more about that scene that was just so packed full of characters and intriguing ideas was a great a great concept. And I think Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina is one of the, I don't know if it's one of the most popular sales wise. I would assume it is, but definitely one of the most influential and sort of like lasting books from this era. It's one that, obviously it's sort of creating stories about these characters that didn't exist at the time the movie was made. So it's expanding on that stuff and sort of, kind of its new ideas and that sort of thing, but it's all rooted in that movie. It's all rooted in A New Hope. And so where some of the other novels and things happening in the expanded universe were shooting off in different directions and creating new stories and new planets and new characters and all that kind of stuff, like this book, Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, was something that was really almost like we were talking about earlier. It's like, well, we have these 3 movies. That's all we kind of have. So we want to dig into them and get as detailed as we can. And this would really scratch that itch at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that the dark seated underbelly kind of vibe. So I think a lot of people were attracted to that, knowing what's going on behind the scenes. And
yeah, absolutely. Before we move on to comics, I feel like maybe I should go back and pick up Darksaber by Kevin J. Anderson, as it centers on a plot by the Hutts to build their own Death Star. That sounds pretty good.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So, alrighty. Ryan, this is kind of your wheelhouse here. Comics. We can talk about.
Not in this episode.
Not in this episode. You haven't read too many of these?
No.
Okay. Well, we have 3 comics listed for 95. X-Wing Rogue Squadron #1, Tales of the Jedi, The Sith War, and Empire's End as well. And these are all out of we use the year by year Star Wars year by year book quite a bit as well. So those are some notable comics, at least from 95. And Empire's End would be let's see, that's wrapping up that Dark Empire saga. So, the cloned Emperor and uber powerful Luke Skywalker and all that kind of stuff. But
I remember all these. Like I said, like a broken record. I went to the bookstore and definitely flipped through all those. I remember. Yeah.
And this is this era in which Dark Horse is really picking up steam and releasing these Star Wars comics too, I think, right, Ryan?
Yeah. And I have the only one that I'm like really familiar with here is the Rogue Squadron books, which launched here. I have like a few floppies, like single issues of those, and I always really liked. I've talked plenty on this show about how I love the space combat stuff, and just like the stories about the pilots and everything. That's one of my favorite things about Star Wars. So like the Rogue Squadron stuff was always like super, super cool to me. And I would like occasionally pick up issues when I was at the comic shop. But I never had like a full run or anything like that. But I did, when Marvel started releasing these epic collections of the old Dark Horse books, I did pick up it's New Republic Volume 2, and it has issues 1 through 16 of the 95 Rogue Squadron comic, and also some additional Rogue Squadron, Rogue Leader comics that were a little after that as well. But you can see like they center around Wedge Antilles, and they're just really fun books to read. Just especially if you like the more recent like Marvel Poe Dameron series. Like I think that's kind of the vibe that they were going for with that series. It's just like, fighter jockeys out on missions, just doing the dirty work and flying around and stuff, and a lot of really great covers. I think the art still holds up pretty well from these books, and yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah. So that sounds like a good way to read these Rogue Squadron comics, that collection you have there. Also, I would assume that they're on that was it Marvel Unlimited app? Is that what it's called?
Ooh, I don't know. That stuff's like so spotty. Like,
oh, really?
I mean, it's just like there may be some issues, but probably not a whole run. And
John, do you have a lot of the comics?
No, that's not really my area.
I wanted all this stuff, but as far as being able to afford it all, that was a struggle for me. So I usually focused on the nonfiction books, but I did get into the comics. I think it was leading up to the Phantom Menace, where they released a Star Wars comic with Mundi's backstory.
Okay.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I got in the run of the first Darth Maul comic series. Those are the two I got into and bought.
Nice.
Later on,
yeah. I like to do the trade paperbacks when I can. It's single issues is tough for me to keep up with. Ryan picks up a lot of the single issues though.
Well, I have for the most recent ones, I have subscriptions through Marvel, so I just get them mailed to me, and it's like it's way cheaper. It's like $25 for a year of a book, so it averages out to like $2 an issue.
Nice.
And since they have $4 cover prices, like that's really nice. But I've just had subscriptions going, but it's crazy. I was just in I was at the Mile High Comics Superstore yesterday, and it's the largest comic book store in the nation, I believe, at least for like square footage. But yeah, that's here in Denver, and actually Mile High is where I used to order a lot of my comics from back in the day, back in the 90s. And they have their front case display, and that's where like all their super expensive books and art are. They have like an original Spider-Man page from Todd McFarlane in there. They have early action comics, like early Amazing Spider-Mans. Like this is the stuff that's like in the hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars stuff. And I was in there today. I always just glance through just to see what new arrivals they have in there. And they had the Dark Empire books in there. They had like a completely like mint set of those. Each of those books was going for over $100.
Oh wow.
And I mean, I remember seeing those on the racks back in the day and like not really thinking anything of it. And I probably have a couple of them somewhere, but yeah, like the demand for those original Dark Horse books seems to really be going up these days.
Wow, I never knew that, how valuable those older ones were. I didn't. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. Well, I guess last note on the comics front here, I will be going to the comic book store once a week starting this week. Jeff, I don't know if you saw, but Ryan and I are pretty excited about the Tales from Vader's Castle comics that are coming out from IDW. And those are happening weekly here for the month of October. So I have a comic book store like half a mile away. I'm going to start going.
Nice.
You're not buying the latest Vader comic series, John?
I haven't been. No.
I have. Yep.
It seems like there's a lot of good things said about those.
Good.
People really like those.
Yeah, I'm hearing good things about that, and the annual too is supposed to be pretty good, right, Ryan?
I have it. I haven't read it yet, but there was again Jocasta Nu coming up again. The second arc of the Vader comic revolved around Jocasta Nu, and it was pretty sweet.
Cool. Okay, let's get to the main event here. The main event for 1995, I think, is the Power of the Force toy line coming back from. Let's see, is it Kenner in 95?
Yeah, it was
still Kenner. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Power of the Force figures coming back, and this is would have been an era in which there were not really any Star Wars action figures coming out for probably 10 years. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah. So let's see, 84, 80. Power of the Force vintage ended in 87, correct?
Oh, okay. So close to 10 years then. Yeah, that sounds right. But it had definitely been quite a bit of time since there had been
seemed like forever. It did seem like forever.
Right. Right. And so so the Power of the Force Wave 1 comes out in 1995. We've got Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, Vader, R2, 3PO, Ben, and a Stormtrooper in this line. And these are if you've you'll know them when you see them because they have a distinct look. These Power of the Force figures from '95, very bulky and
huge
and beefy. Yeah, big guys.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, were you picking these up in '95, or is this something you came to later?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I didn't really know this was going on as far as the whole boom of Star Wars things being released, and I noticed them in '96. That's when I started buying. So I think maybe Wave 5 might have been coming out with the Han and the Hoth gear.
Okay.
That wave with the yeah,
Nice.
Death Star Gunner, I think was in that wave. But yeah, so it was early '96, and I was in a mall with my wife, walking to the food court, and remember KB Toys, guys?
Oh yes.
Okay. So out of the corner of my eye, sometimes I'll put a rack out actually into the walkway. Separate. But the Star Wars logo caught my eye, and I looked over and I saw all these Star Wars action figures. I mean, what is going on here? Is this possible? Star Wars action figures again? And so I'm looking at these and talk to my wife. I go, wow, I used to really get into the figures. I actually had the vintage at one time, a lot of them, and the typical story. Sold them in a garage sale. I have no idea what my parents did to them. But anyways, so I go, just for old time's sake, how about I'm just gonna pick up one of these. And there's a Boba Fett sitting there. Okay, so I'm like, all right, this is great. Go home and just have this one action figure and relive my memories. And went to the food court, spent a bun, whatever we did, I can't remember. And on the way back, it's like, how about just one more? I'd rather have it.
So you didn't even get out of the mall before you bought a second one?
Yeah, I'm like, there's a Darth Vader sitting there. That one was a really cool standing next to Boba Fett, I think, right? She's like, okay, whatever. 2 action figures, you dork, Just take them home and be happy. And the next weekend, I'm back at KB Toys with the shopping cart.
Yeah.
Just picking up everything. Because they actually had the time, all the other 4 waves there, except for, now remember this, Leia. I think she was only 1 per case. And I remember there being just people going crazy. That's when the price guys had her really, looked like maybe everything else in the wave would have been $8, and she was like $20 in the price guides. Everybody was just, in the flea markets or whoever were just gouging you for that price. I went to flea markets too, trying to complete all these waves, because you can get everything at KB, or have most of it. So I had to have everything, because I instantly became a completist, which was just, it's haunted me for my whole life.
I feel that.
Let me tell you.
So you were picking up, so early '96. You're cleaning up, like going back and getting all the figures released in '95,
right.
and starting a complete collection. Now, do you have a complete? I think you said you do have a complete collection of the Power of the Force figures from this time.
I have a complete collection from everything released up into 2012.
Wow.
So I have every single action figure ever released, every figure from the deluxe packs, convention exclusives, mail aways, everything, guys. And sometimes there'd be like a new ad that was released a while ago, and it had an exclusive figure in it. And well, I had to have it. So I'd go on eBay and I just look around until I could find somebody selling on loose for $10-12 or whatever. And that's how I completed the collection that way. As far as, because I think that the ad was over $100, so I'm not going to buy that just for the figure. I was into the figures more than the vehicles.
Okay.
I did have the vehicles, like the big 4 from '95. It was the X-wing, TIE fighter, the AT-AT, and what was the? Like you have this.
There was a Falcon and a land speeder.
Yeah, right, land speeder. Yeah, I picked up those sometime in '96.
And was it an AT-ST that was released before the AT-AT, or was it AT-AT first? Because I think the list I looked at was an AT-ST.
My bad. Yep, AT-ST. Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's one thing I'm curious about. I don't have I have a handful of loose Power of the Force figures from this time. I've got a handful of them. And I've kind of let my kids play with them and stuff. So I'm not even sure exactly which ones I have, but I have some of them. I don't have anything approaching a complete collection. I don't have any of the vehicles, and I think the vehicles look really cool from this time. So I was curious about that. So you say you do have like the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter and stuff?
Yeah.
Do you have the Falcon?
I did not, no.
No Falcon, okay.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I picked up a few of the vehicles at the very beginning there, then I just kind of focused on figures.
Right. Yeah. And you keep them loose, or you keep them carded?
They were all in individual baggies right now with their weapons packed away in boxes. At one point, I had the room we're sitting in here before it became a workout room now. It's a treadmill right here. But about 8 shelves, like 4 levels high, and every single figure I had displayed from 95 to 2012. And what I did, and which I don't think anybody else has ever did this. I haven't heard anybody mention it, but I did it like chronologically. I displayed them exactly how they came out, wave by wave.
Oh wow!
So the first figure you'd see would be the the Luke Skywalker on the first shelf on the top, and then just worked my way down until 2012 was on the last shelf.
Wow!
And boy, wow. Yeah, it's and you know what? I can't find my pictures, guys, and it's killing me. I don't know what happened to them, where I lost them. I have pictures of my collection from up to 95 to 2000 in a closet. I'll have to send those to you sometime, what I had at that point. So
yeah, for sure. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I would love to see those.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask Ryan if you were picking these up at the time in 95. It sounds like yes.
Yeah. So 1994, I think, was the year that turned me into like a complete collector nerd, because 1994 was when Todd Toys launched, later to be known as McFarlane Toys, but sure. Todd Toys launched and put out the first wave of Spawn figures. And as I've mentioned many times, I love Spawn. And it was like, that was my thing in 90, 94, 95. And so because of, loving the comics Spawn and then like reading Wizard magazine, like I found out about these figures, and then, I wanted to hunt down these Spawn figures. So like, I'd go to Toys R Us all the time. I'd have my, usually one of my parents or my grandma take me, because I was in like 7th grade probably at the time. And I also had like no income at all. Like, so it was just like an allowance and like doing chores. So like every couple of weeks I'd get to go to like Toys R Us and like, Toys R Us and or the comic shop, and I'd get like a couple comics and I'd get a Spawn figure. And then 95 rolls around, and like this is when I'm starting to get into Star Wars. I'm reading The Glove of Darth Vader, renting the movies, and so like but I'm also reading Wizard magazine, so like I know these figures are coming, and I'm already kind of like into the idea of like going and buying figures to display, which is like it's kind of weird at the time, because I had not really had action figures for a few years at that point. I'm in 7th grade, and like figures were something you played with as a kid, but then suddenly there's these figures and people are like, hey, put them on your shelf.
Right.
Like put them on your dresser, your nightstand. Like they look cool. Just have them sit there. And like that was like a really radical concept at the time. And like don't just throw them in a sandbox and like let the dog chew on them. Like set them up. These look awesome. They're like having like posters on your wall. And so yeah, so I knew the Star Wars figures were coming. My friend Mike and I were there on like it wasn't really a day one. There was no like Midnight Madness or anything, is at least in our town, or at least that I knew of. They were just all of a sudden one day in 1995, they were just there. And and then I mean, my friend Mike and I were just on it. Like we would pick up figures whenever we could and when we could afford them. In our town, I remember I actually found a Leia really easily. And I got a Leia right away. The one that was really hard for me to find, just because, like, there were only a handful of stores I had access to without like a car or anything. There was like an Osco, which was like a drugstore that I could ride my bike to. And then like if my, my family would go to like Target or Kmart or Walmart or when I'd get to go to Toys R Us, I only had a few stores I had access to, so I was limited by those stocks, and there was, no eBay or anything at this time. So what I couldn't find for the longest time was a C-3PO. And what was so great about that being the figure that I couldn't find, it was months. It was literally months trying to, like, I was like well into 96 when I finally found a 3PO figure, and it was literally like striking gold because like it was just so perfect because he's like this shiny gold thing sitting on the rack, and I was like, yes. And that was really exciting. I also remember hunting for the Boba Fett and the Lando in the second wave. Those were really hard to find in our area. And like, the only other person I knew who was collecting these in the same area was my friend Mike. So when he got a Lando, I was like, well, I guess I'm not getting a Lando anytime soon because you bought the one in our town. Like, so, it was so fun. We were, always, him and I were trying to find different ways to like display our figures. We were like building shelves ourselves with like wood that we'd find around. Like,
it doesn't sound like you, Ryan. That's Star Wars changed like you.
A little bit. Made me a handyman. That's why I have
Ryan, you mentioned the thrill of the hunt. Boy, do I know all about that.
Yeah.
As far as the time and miles and gas I used trying to find all these figures. Just
yeah. And it would get much more insane once I was like had a job and a car and stuff. That's when you're like waiting at Walmart's at like at 1 a.m, just waiting for the employees to unload
the door.
Yeah. Like, they're watching them unload and open boxes. That's when it gets really weird. But it's a great time. I mean, sadly, my Star Wars collection, like I went up through Revenge of the Sith. I was there. I didn't have a complete collection, but I'd buy basically the figures I'd want up through Revenge of the Sith. And then when I moved to Japan in 2007, I sold all of my figures across like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Spawn, comics, like DC, Marvel figures, everything, before moving to Japan because I couldn't take them with me, and I could use the money. But since then, I've kind of like rebuilt my collection, starting with Force Awakens, and so it's a shadow of its former self, but I still do love the experience of going out and collecting figures.
Well, yeah, collecting the figures, just seeing the figures just hit a certain chord with me as far as taking me back to my youth. But the problem is once I caught up with all the Star Wars figures that I needed, I wanted something more. I still had that thirst for other things, and I actually have you're not going to believe this, guy. It's a complete collection of the Babylon 5 action figures. So I was in the Babylon 5 TV show.
Yeah.
I have them all. And those are all still covered in
yeah.
when I bought the Battlestar Galactica rebooted the line at that time, and I bought all those.
Ooh,
I remember those ones.
I have the Battlestar Galactica mini vehicles.
I also have the
little titanium ones. Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. What else was there? Yeah, just buying Batman figures. I'm not sure why I even bought those things.
Just once you got into the habit of buying toys and the thrill of the hunt and all that stuff, you couldn't let it go like when you were complete. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's really bad because my wife has started, we when we go to stores, I always go to the toy aisle, and she's started going as well in the past couple of years. So she started collecting Marvel Legends figures, and now she's actually getting into collecting wrestling figures.
Yes.
Which is a really dangerous road to go down.
Wow.
So yeah, and we don't even have room for this stuff. Some of the stuff goes straight into boxes and into our storage unit, but it's when you're in that moment, it's so hard to resist.
Yeah. So Jeff, I have a couple questions for you then. As far as the Power of the Force, this early wave of Power of the Force figures, being somebody who has all of the Star Wars figures from 95 to 2012 and more, how do these hold up to you? What's your kind of opinion on these figures now? I mean, are they some of your favorites? Are you
these first initial waves definitely have a special place in my heart for these. I know a lot of people are down on them because of they're buffed up because they released these first few waves for kids to play with. So I see where they were going with as far as having them all muscular and ripped and everything. It made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
As far as collectors wanting to collect them, yeah, the quality isn't there. An articulation that came after, but I love these figures. I mean, they're my favorites actually because it just kicked off the whole collecting thing for me again. And yeah, I love them.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they do look sort of maybe ridiculous is a little harsh, but I mean they're very stylized interpretations of the Star Wars characters. And if you're looking for screen accuracy and authenticity and stuff, these aren't exactly the figures for that. But at the same time, what would it be 23 years removed here from these figures coming out. To me, it's all about how they represent that era, and they're very representative of that time and place, and the memories we have with being a Star Wars fan at that time. So I wasn't chasing them down at this time like you guys were. Unfortunately, I wish I had those memories myself. But even without that, to me, it's just I love these figures just because they, like I said, they have a very unique look and feel, and it's totally tied to this era of Star Wars when Star Wars was really coming back in a big way. And I think that's really cool. So. Yeah. And then, the other thing that's interesting about these, I put a photo in the notes here that I think I got from Rebel Scum, just so I could look at these as we're talking about them. And, I know that these figures were initially released with these super long lightsabers, and then they kind of put them out with shorter versions. So that's pretty cool. Jeff, do you have some of
that's when collecting got weird, right? The variations.
Yeah.
That happened pretty quick. Yeah, with the lightsaber. No, I do not have all the small variations.
Okay.
I didn't hunt down all those.
So, but in 96, were they already down to the shorter lightsabers at that point, or were
Ryan, do you remember that one? I don't remember when they actually had the changeover from the length.
I would look think so long.
So. Yeah, because they're the sabers are like Luke's saber is as taller than him.
Taller than him. Yeah.
I definitely have the short versions because they came out later. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, but even that makes sense though, because Jeff, you were saying they look like toys you'd play with, and they look like they were designed with play in mind.
Like superheroes buffed up. That's what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but a longer lightsaber speaks to that too. Because if I've got my figures and I want them to be fighting with their lightsabers and everything, that longer saber, it's easier to kind of clash those. And but I bet they broke a little more easily too. I would guess. So.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. One last thing on this initial wave of the figures. I think it was this, as we've talked about before, and like you mentioned, it's a sign of the times. I think these were the perfect way to bring these figures back. I think if they had gone with like the kind of like stiff, just like straight upright Kenner designs of the, you know, the vintage wave, like I think those would have sold well to like vintage fans. But I think during this time, 1995, like you had to have something like a little bit dynamic, you know, especially following the launch of like the Spawn toys. And then, you know, like Marvel would do like their like animated X-Men waves, and, you know, like all these figures that were hitting the shelves were like these really dynamic, like cool, actiony designs to them. And I think this was like a really, going this design route was like a really smart call by, you know, everyone at Lucas, to make it like make these appealing in this time period. And I think it's the same way that you know, the comic art in like the Dark Horse books of this era was, you know, it was on the level of, you know, the comic art coming out of DC and Marvel and Image. And it was like, they look like 90s comic books. But if they had gone, they didn't decide to go like the nostalgic route. Like they didn't go with like the 70s Marvel look for the comics. And the same thing with like the Galaxy trading cards, like using the hottest, you know, comic artists of the time period and making these like crazy, like new interpretations of these characters. Like, I think what was really smart about the way they brought Star Wars back at this time was it wasn't just a nostalgia trip. Like, it was like, hey, Star Wars is cool and relevant now. It's like as cool as Spawn or Batman or, you know, anything else that's happening right now. Like, it's Star Wars is forever. It's modern. It's not just this thing that like your parents watched in the 70s. Like, and I don't know, like if it could have been very different if they would have gone like a straight nostalgia route. Like, I don't know if I would have been as drawn to this stuff in like the mid 90s as I was. And I don't know if it would have brought me back into Star Wars in the same way.
You know what? This is just my opinion, but I don't think they knew the gold mine they were sitting on. I know the vintage was a gold mine, and then it kind of died off.
Yeah.
At that point, before this line came out, you did vintage for hardly anything. I mean, the demand wasn't there. I absolutely believe that they released these for kids. With the way they were, like you said, stylized that way. Yeah, I don't think they had any idea that it was going to be people my age that were going to be going and buying them right from the get-go. And they, you know, absolutely changed the way they, the way they looked at everything as far as going away from that to meet the collector's demands.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's probably something they inadvertently created by not really providing, you know, content and product for so long, you know, in between the trilogies, or I guess not in between the trilogies, but in between, you know, 86, 87, when everything really slowed down, and, you know, the mid 90s when they started ramping things up again. I mean, if you were a Star Wars fan who grew up playing with Star Wars toys in the 70s and 80s, and then, you know, there was just nothing for 10 years, and then you see that stuff on the shelf again, it's like, it's going to be a bigger deal than, you know, if they had been consistently releasing Star Wars toys all that time. You know, I don't know that you would have freaked out at that KB like you did, Jeff, you know, but with the absence of them for so long. But yeah, I'm sure you're right. I mean, I'm sure they made them for kids, and then we're surprised to see that so many, you know, grown fans were excited about them too. But I guess it all worked out, even if it probably wasn't necessarily the plan at the time on their part. And you know what? We haven't talked about the mail-ins yet, but I think those kind of speak to the fact that these are marketed and produced for kids too, right? So there was the Han Solo Stormtrooper that you could mail in, proof of purchase from cereal boxes, Kellogg's cereal boxes, to get a Han Solo Stormtrooper.
Fruit Loops to be, yeah.
Oh, was it Fruit Loops?
It was Fruit Loops, yeah.
Okay, nice. And I did have one of those. I do remember getting that, and that was cool. For some reason, I was thinking it was Luke and Han, but no, it was Han, right? Just Han. Is there? I mean, I'm sure there was a Luke Stormtrooper figure in the line at some point?
Yeah, that's released. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
The 96 or 97.
Mm-hmm.
I remember. Yeah, but the mail away, I was really excited about that too because I actually mailed away for it. I'm not sure how long that mail away was available, but it still was in early '96 because I remember picking up the box and getting the proof of purchases, mailing it away, and I remember going to that mailbox every day for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, that was on my mind after work every day. I got to get to the mailbox, see if it's there. But actually, see, here he is.
Oh,
he is
yeah.
right here.
Nice.
Yeah.
There he is. Wow.
It came in like a plain white box, right?
Plain white box, right?
Yeah, I remember getting. I can vaguely remember the day it finally came, and then you open it up, and there was like the figure in just like a wrapper in the white box.
Yeah, just a plastic wrapper, right?
Yeah,
it's very, very generic.
Yeah.
And but it was exciting to because I mailed away for things when I was a kid, and to be able to do that again was pretty exciting.
I wish they would bring that back. I really wish they would bring that back.
Remember the was it Mace Windu? The mail away? Was that a mail away?
I think that was like the episode 1 preview figure that came in like the square box.
Yeah,
I remember.
It was him and a Stap, right? That you could buy like in '98, I think. Or maybe it was. I think it was '98. It was a preview figure.
I'm not sure how you got those. I don't remember actually.
I think you're right, Jeff. I don't know. I don't remember for sure either. I know the Stap I think you could buy at the store. But I want to say that Mace Windu was a mail away.
I remember because I mailed away for 4 of them.
Oh yeah.
Because it was inexpensive to acquire them with the proof of purchases. So I just
Yeah,
you got a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And we don't want to forget to mention the Spirit Obi-Wan that was from the Lay's potato chips mail away, I believe, right? And that's a cool looking figure as well. I don't have one of those, but he looks pretty cool. So
I think I picked that one up at a flea market at some point.
Okay, nice.
But Ryan, you said you were always going to the stores and you couldn't find figures. Was the flea market not an option for you, or places like that to maybe pay a couple dollars more than you normally would? Because I didn't have a problem with it.
I did go to flea markets. Like my family would go occasionally. Mine never really had figures. I remember getting video games at the flea market, like old Nintendo games, but I never remembered there being figures. Like I remembered there being like booths that would have like the old like G.I. Joe dolls, like the really big ones. But like when I was like an adult, I would definitely go to flea markets and for Star Wars figures and stuff. I'd just go there myself. But as a kid, I don't remember ever seeing the figures there, at least in the ones we would go to.
Well, I remember as early as early '96, the people that would have their little booths at the flea markets were at the stores when they opened, buying everything they could. And the scalping started real early.
Yeah.
Collecting phase right there, because I remember I had if I could find something a couple dollars more than retail, that was okay with me to complete the collection at the time. Then I kick myself I find it at the store 2 days later, right?
Yeah,
always happened.
Yep, I still do that for like variant covers of comics on eBay. I'm like, well, it's only $3 more than cover price. Like, I'll just get it because I really want this cover. Yeah,
I didn't like supporting scalpers or guys at flea markets. That's where you see the Leia going for $20, which is just,
yeah. I would see that at like my comic shop a bit. Like I'd see the markups there. Right. So I never really bought the figures there. I would always just try to find them at the stores. And that's still kind of my philosophy. Like for figures, I'm like, well, there's enough targets around here. Like if I'm looking for something, I'll find it eventually. Like I don't need to overpay.
Yeah, I only did that for a couple of years. I got to the point where I didn't want to, like I said, support that kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, obviously, like a huge milestone in Star Wars fandom here is the Power of the Force Star Wars toys coming out again in '95. So, very big deal, and one that'll continue throughout the '90s. I guess I should mention real quick too, my little Power of the Force story before we move on to a couple other things and wrap up here. I didn't have, too many of these figures at the time, but I'm sure I've mentioned it on the show before, but my friend Chris in the mid 2000s hosted a couple of big time to us Star Wars Trivial Pursuit tournaments in which we'd all pay like an entry fee, and he'd collect a couple $100, and he would use it to buy like food, but also prizes. And he's the best. Chris is the best. He makes an amazing event out of this when he does it. And he really gets a kick out of getting like a fantastic prize and then but nobody knows what it is. And so I remember for that one, my friend Dan, who's been on the show many times, Dan won the contest that day, and then he walked us all into this bedroom in his house, and set up in this room was not a totally complete, but I would say a 90% complete collection of the Power of the Force figures from throughout the 90s. So Jeff, you would probably know, like it started in '95. How long did the Power of the Force line run? Probably until
they had the orange cards and the green cards, I believe. Was it 2? Was 3?
Probably up until just like when the Phantom Menace line was going to start, right? I would think.
Yeah, that's what I believe. Yeah, that's a good question. Surprised I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, but I mean, we walked into this room and there was just like, 80 or 100, I don't know how many figures, but action figures like in carded, just lined up on the floor and along the wall and everything. And it was like, oh, this is what you win now for this is your prize for winning this tournament. And my mind was blown, especially because, I had the chance to win it and I didn't. So it was amazing. But so that's a big memory for me with this line of figures. It's just walking into this room and seeing them all displayed there and being happy for my friend Dan, and also being disgusted with myself for not pulling it out and winning, because that would be
you could have those hanging
in
up.
This room. Oh, they'd be hanging up. That's for sure. Yeah.
So you knew that was the prize before the contest?
I think I actually did, but I don't think anybody else did, because I kind of helped Chris set things up a little bit. I didn't know until the day, but I think I got there a little early to help him like set up like decorations and stuff. And he was like, hey, come check this out. And I was like, oh my God.
That changed the whole way as far as to make you a little bit more nervous answering the question and maybe forget a few things you shouldn't have.
It might have.
Stakes were too high.
Yeah. I'm pretty good at Star Wars trivia, at least within our group of friends. And I've never won one of these tournaments, and I get a lot of heat for that, like for being a choke artist, basically, because I've almost won a couple times and then I fall apart. So Jeff, it could have been knowing that that prize was down the hall that did that. I think we actually have video. I should try to dig it up. I think we have video of us, our whole group, walking into that room and seeing those toys there for the first time. So I'll have to try to track those down. I have it on VHS tape somewhere.
Nice.
Don't know if I have it digitized or not. I gotta look for that. So
quite a generous prize, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's very much him. He's a super generous guy, and he loves to kind of make other people's year, I would say, in that case. That kind of stuff. So it's not a thing where he's like buying it and thinking 75% chance I'm keeping this for myself. That's not how he really loves to make people happy with that stuff. So it was a great thing. But all right, well, let's change direction here. We have not too much time left, but we got to talk about a couple of games and other things that came out in '95. So basically 2 video games, big releases in '95, which were Dark Forces and Rebel Assault 2. So let's start with Dark Forces. Ryan, you kind of want to take the lead on this one?
Sure. Yeah. This game came out. I was Doom had come out in December of '93, and kind of changed, like how we thought about PC video games and video games in general. It was like really kind of like one of those cultural zeitgeists, and all of a sudden, like, hey, first person shooter is now a genre. And actually, it wasn't even called first-person shooter at the time. Everyone referred to these kind of games as Doom clones, and because there was no other term, because Doom didn't invent the genre. There had been other shooters, including its own Wolfenstein, but they popularized it and brought it to like the mainstream in Doom, which was it was controversial, it was fun, it was like the graphics were amazing at the time, like it was just like a perfect storm. And so one of the earlier Doom clones was Dark Forces, and it came out essentially like a little over a year after Doom, and it was a Star Wars themed first-person shooter. And I didn't actually own the game for years, but I remember getting a demo on like a 3.5-inch floppy disk from, I think it was like PC Gamer magazine. And I got that demo and installed it on my family's PC, and I was blown away by Dark Forces when it came out. There was voice acting in it. It, like, the stormtroopers looked like stormtroopers. It had all these Star Wars weapons and music, and it was really fun too. So going back and playing it now, I got it on Steam, and it's like $5 on there now, and it like runs on modern PCs. It will run on just about anything. And going back and playing it now, I still think it's really fun. Like the level designs are kind of hard to figure out, figure out where you're supposed to go sometimes, but like it moves so fast, and it still has that like Star Wars feel to it that it's just a lot of fun to play now. It's very like Twitch and arcade style. And the production values are just really, really good for the time period. But I only played through the first couple missions recently, but the first mission, you play as Kyle Katarn, who is a character created for...
I've got to correct you. It's Kyle Katarn.
Katarn.
Kyle Katarn.
Katarn. Okay. Yes.
That's tantamount to pronouncing Dash Rendar's name incorrectly, Ryan.
Dash Rendar?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. One of the most beloved EU figures, Kyle.
Kyle
Here.
Katarn.
He basically pulls a Rogue One and steals the Death Star plans in the first mission of the game, which is pretty epic, especially at the time. The way it fit into like the greater canon.
A lot of Dianogas in that mission, if I remember correctly, right? Am I thinking of the wrong? I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
No. You're okay. Whatever. Okay, that's fine. It's up for debate. I think there's some Dianogas in that game.
I don't think they're in the first mission though.
Oh, all right.
It's just a bunch of stormtroopers. Second mixed mission is when Crix Madine defects. So this is the moment where he we all know that he was an Empire. I don't remember what position he held in the Empire, but he was like a captain something. But he defects to the rebels, and your mission is tied into his defection, and that's pretty cool. Going back now, so yeah, I think the game's still fun, still holds up. I liked it a ton at the time. I still have a place in my heart for it.
Yeah, it's a good game. I've played a fair amount of it recently on either PS3 or PS4, I think. I can't remember where
PS3.
I played it. PS3?
Yeah.
Okay.
PS1 games aren't on PS4.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. So I played a fair amount of it on PS1, and that's the version that I like because I'm not a mouse and keyboard gamer at all. So I tried to play this on Steam recently, and I was like, wait, I can't use my controller. I don't know. So I didn't really go for it, but it is a fun game, and yeah, I think it still holds up. Jeff, I think you said you're not super into the games, right? So
my Star Wars gaming experience starts 1 year later.
Oh, okay.
With,
Shadows of the Empire?
Oh, yes.
Nice.
I don't think I've ever played any game more in my life.
Oh, man.
NFL sports games and all that kind of thing, but this one, yeah, number one.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
a whole different conversation.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to talk about that one in '96 for sure. The other release though was Rebel Assault 2, also on PC, and this one did come to PlayStation as well. It is PC game, right, Ryan?
Yep.
Rebel Assault 2, yeah. So this is like a live action footage game. It's pretty crazy actually to go back, and I tried to play a little bit of this too, and then I ended up just watching a lot of footage on YouTube of this one. But
yeah,
man, it's like a Star Wars fan film meets interactive video game thing. It's really weird, but pretty cool actually, I think.
Yeah.
The story's a little, maybe the story and the acting is a little, it doesn't quite, it's sort of like off-brand Star Wars, I think you'd say a little bit.
Fan film is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah. But visually it's pretty impressive, especially for the time. It was made by Factor 5, and they have made some incredible Star Wars games, very impressive technically, Star Wars games. So, but it's very much like, 30-second cutscene, then like some loading time, then all of a sudden you are controlling this person, in this interactive. It feels like an interactive cutscene almost, is like how the gameplay is. What's the technical terminology I'm not using here, Ryan, that I should be using? Like, how do you describe this game?
I like it really is just those FMV games from the time period, like, I don't know, Mad Dog McCree or any of those, where you're just basically on PC, you're just like basically clicking your mouse around. There's a little bit more control they adapted the controls a bit to the PlayStation version. But yeah, it's not like an adventure game where you can just go move anywhere. You're on like a very linear path. Like it's kind of like almost like a light gun game in a lot of ways, like House of the Dead or something.
Yeah.
Where you're just like on this very strict path, but you like have movements, like a small range of movement.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny too because like it's clearly the actors were shot against a green screen, and then rather than build sets or something, they've got these like 1995 3D rendered backgrounds that look interesting. I mean, they sometimes they look okay, and sometimes they just look like so blocky and polygonal and just like, I don't know. It's a really weird vibe, like full motion video actors against these like very rudimentary kind of 3D backgrounds. It's a compelling looking thing. It's definitely and I'll take you back to 95 as well for sure. You have a copy of it there, Ryan?
Yeah, I actually have Dark Forces and Rebel Assault 2 came out on PlayStation around the same time. I think they may have came out in like late 95, early 96, and they're both custom PlayStation editions.
Oh, you hold that up a little higher there.
Yeah.
It's a little higher.
Okay.
Yep.
So they're custom PlayStation editions. They have this little badge on there, and that's just like they adjusted the controls to go from like PC controls to, the PlayStation controller, which was like fairly limited compared to a PC. So this was actually a big deal because they came out exclusively on PlayStation after their PC releases. So that was like another big get for Sony at this time.
Cool. Yeah, I love those giant CD cases. That's making me want to get on eBay and track down copies of those games. Actually,
just
they're
like the
giant
$5.
Are they really?
Yeah. but
nice.
These are like dirt cheap. So yeah,
I'm probably not going to pop them into an actual PlayStation to play, but I'd like to have copies.
You can play them on your PS3.
No, I can't.
Okay. No,
because only we don't have to talk about it now, but only the launch PS3s had backwards compatibility with
PS1. All PS3s play PS1 games.
Oh, it's PS2 that they don't have compatibility.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. Okay, cool. So yeah, both good games from '95. Sort of, products of their time. A little bit, I don't know. They're maybe a little bit tough to go back and play, but they're pretty cool. So
yeah. I would say for Rebel Assault 2, definitely listen to the Blast Points episode on that game. They go like super deep. They actually contact people involved with the game to talk about it. That is a really great episode of Blast Points.
That's required listening every week. Blast Points
for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
right.
I love those guys. I'll have to try to link to that in the show notes.
One thing, I have to talk about it, but it's interesting. It says the first in-universe Star Wars footage to be shot since Return of the Jedi was in Rebel Assault. So that must have been kind of exciting for buying that game and being able to know you're going to see new footage. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, and that's from the year by year book that was pointed out, and yeah, that's really that is. Well,
you're talking about the green screen and everything, so obviously, it was new footage.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and some of it, like I said, some of it looks really good. Like the screenshot here in the book of the stormtrooper in the hallway there, that I think that looks pretty good actually. For not being a set and for it being a 3D render, like it looks pretty decent. But then there's other parts where it looks a little crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I remember playing it on the PlayStation in probably '96 and feeling like, wow, this is actually kind of incredible. I feel like I'm playing a movie right now,
Mm-hmm.
So the whole Night Trap, Sega CD, like PlayStation type, FMV thing, like you said, it definitely had that feel.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, like you said, going back and at the time realizing how great you thought this was at the time. When you look back and what we have now compared to what we have now, it's funny.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Okay, so we will start to wrap up here, but there's another major release from '95 that we haven't talked at all about, and it's such a big deal and such a big part of my Star Wars fandom. So we got to spend at least a couple minutes talking about the THX VHS / Laserdisc re-releases of the Star Wars trilogy. These were huge for me. Like, this is like probably the thing. I know for maybe a lot of people, like the Power of the Force was the thing that jump-started the Star Wars fandom again, but for me, this is it. These THX releases were huge for me. So same for you guys. Jeff, was it a big deal for you to get these THX
as much as I like to figure, this is definitely the most important thing. These are the movies. Yeah, this is definitely the most exciting thing about '95.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not that they weren't available on VHS before this, but there was something about the marketing push, and honestly, I think the interviews with George Lucas with Leonard Maltin before the movies too. But there was just something where it was like Star Wars was back, and re-releasing them this way on VHS was huge.
And what's interesting about the Lucas interviews is it was a different time. It seemed like he was a little bit more open.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the discussion, as for details and information he would talk about, he'd just be very forthcoming and just give you information you didn't even ask about. He'd just kind of go off, and I thought that was interesting because it's completely different now, obviously.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the thing is too, like I went back and watched these interviews this morning, actually, on YouTube, the Leonard Maltin interviews. And it's interesting too, because the way he talks about Star Wars, I can hear like my own view of Star Wars in what he's saying. And I don't mean that in the sense that like George Lucas and I think alike. We're both great thinkers. I mean that in the sense that like I watched these interviews so many times that it shaped the way I view Star Wars. Like hearing George Lucas talk about it this way, when he's talking about, well, it's a 3-act structure. And in the second act, when he's talking about Empire, you put all your heroes against the worst things they could. And that's screenwriting and storytelling and whatever. But like that was cemented into my brain hearing him say that. And him talking in the Return of the Jedi interviews about how, this saga is really Anakin, the story of Darth Vader's redemption. And then the prequels, we're going to learn about his story leading up to that and everything. It's and the 6 movies together are kind of the story of Anakin Skywalker. That stuff is just all so, I don't know, it just made such a big impression on me at the time, because it was the guy who created this talking about it and how it was conceived and how it was produced, but also because I think I just watched these VHS tapes so many times that I heard these interviews so many times. So, and shout out to the set. The set is incredible. If you go back and watch those interviews, it's like a dark room and they have these like probably like translucent curtains hanging there, but with like little white lights. It looks like a star field kind of around there. I love George Lucas's like gray sport coat and black turtleneck. That's also really great too. So yeah, those interviews are fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, you say this is the way kind of how it shaped how you view Star Wars. For me, I agree with that too. But the other big one for me was the making of Star Wars in 1977. When that was released. I'm just being a little kid and being able to see that. So that sticks with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have, man, I wish I'd pulled it out, but I have a copy of that on VHS that I think would have been released around the same time as this, if I'm not mistaken, because it has the similar, I'll hold up. I pulled out my laser discs. I did end up getting these on Laserdisc sometime in the 2000s. So here, this is one of them. I love the art is fantastic on these, I think. And again, like Ryan, it's not just playing on the nostalgia, like you were talking about with the Power of the Force toys, but it's like an updated, modern at the time presentation of, these movies. Technologically or technically, I guess, with the remastered THX version of the movies, but also with the marketing and the art and all that stuff. But yeah, I have a copy of the making of Star Wars that I think uses this kind of art style. So it probably was released around that time too. I don't know if it was a bonus or was it that the VHS tape, if you bought if you bought all three of them, maybe that was the only way you could buy them, is you bought all three together. And did they come with the making of Star Wars 2 as a fourth tape? I'm not remembering now. I don't know.
There's a box set. There's a box set. Was it 92 that included with it?
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I should have pulled that out to look at here or to have, but okay, maybe that's the case then, Jeff. That sounds right.
You want to know what I think the most interesting thing about this release is? I remember the marketing for the last time. It was almost like they were trying to scare you.
Yes.
The last time you could ever.
Yeah. I took the sticker off one of the packages and put it on here on mine because I've got these in like a.
They were actually right. They were actually right until 2006 when they included the uncut DVD version in the. But as far as this version, guys, it's the first time that I ever got to see it in widescreen presentation and seeing things off to the side that you never see before. And one of the scenes in particular that always stood out to me was when Luke was looking down at the Tusken Raiders on the Bantha. And he goes, I can't remember his direct quote. It was, "Oh, there's one there." But originally you couldn't see that, all my life watching the VHS tapes. But now it's expanded, and you see the actual Bantha with a Tusken Raider on it right before the other Tusken Raider starts coming after Luke, with the stick. So,
nice.
Things like that, like Jabba's palace, the creatures off to the side, especially in the cantina, you see things that you just never saw before, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's in the like mid 2000s is when I tracked down these laser discs. And it was because of the whole, see it for the last time or whatever you want to say. It was the best possible way at that time to watch these movies. It still kind of is, honestly, because the DVD set is not really the preferred way, I don't think, because it doesn't have the THX like kind of remaster and improved like video and sound and all that stuff. So it kind of is, at least if you want to do it legally, the best way to watch these. If you want to see the original pre-special edition version. So not that I do that very often, but it's cool to have them. And like I said, I just love the art too. So it's great to have them on Laserdisc.
Was the chuckle for the Harmies edition?
What's that?
Was the chuckle there from the Harmies edition? Where you said the legally?
No, I wasn't thinking of that specifically, but yeah. I just know, that you can grab them probably in a lot of different, ways.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so super, super exciting time. I think without these THX re-releases, I don't know that I would be sitting here doing a Power of the 90s podcast, looking back at how much I love Star Wars in the 90s. I think this is kind of a big deal. And those Leonard Maltin interviews, I will I will love them forever, you know. And I watched them again this morning, like I said, and there's really, in some ways there's a lot of substance, in some ways there's not. They're like 6 minutes long, and they're, you know, some of the questions are pretty basic, honestly, but they're just, I just love them so much. I don't know.
Yeah, and you can easily watch those on YouTube now. That's how I watched them again recently.
Yep. So
that's cool.
Okay, well, a couple things, just final things to wrap up here. Ryan, you put this in the notes, and this is interesting. The first official Star Wars website launched in 95 as well.
Yeah, in July. So it was to promote the, I think it was made by, like, it was through 20th Century Fox, and it was to promote the THX re-releases. But also on there, on the site, you could download images of props. You could look at scripts. There were short, low-quality video clips. There was some trivia, apparently. Yeah, I should have checked this. I'm not sure if this website is archived anywhere.
Yeah.
Like using the Wayback Machine or something.
Right.
But I would love to actually like click through it.
Yeah. Cool. Another thing that I do actually remember from the time, was kind of a cool thing, is the Energizer Bunny ad with Darth Vader. And that was a cool thing for sure. Featured a pretty impressive recreation of the Cloud City Duel set. Yeah. So that was cool at the time, and another example of Star Wars being back in the zeitgeist or whatever, being back in the mindset of the mainstream. So that was cool too. And then one more thing, I guess, from the year to year book here is we're sort of starting the prequel era, because George Lucas is talking about the prequels in the Leonard Maltin interviews, and in fact, animatics are beginning for Episode 1's pod race in 1995. That's wild to think.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I actually didn't know that. Yeah. When was it officially announced that the prequels were being, Episode 1 was actually going to be made? Do you remember when exactly?
94? Was it 94? Because that's when Doug Chiang came on, right, John?
Yeah, I think so. I think we talked about that last time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was announced in 94, I want to say. He started writing the script for Phantom Menace in 94 in November. And you can see footage of that in the beginning, our favorite documentary.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Doug Chiang started working on the movie in 94 as well. So yeah, it's interesting. In that Leonard Maltin interview, George mentions, we're going to shoot them all at the same time. Like, I don't know if in 95 he thought they were going to do it Lord of the Rings style and just shoot all three movies together. He also said he was going to write all three scripts at once too, and neither of those things happened, as far as I know. So things change, but that was interesting. So cool. All right, well, I think we should wrap it up here. Our look back at 1995 and Star Wars. Huge year, obviously, and I think we could have talked about some of this stuff even more than we did, but just a lot of great stuff to cover. And each year of this decade kind of improves in terms of how much Star Wars there is and kind of what's going on with Star Wars. But other than 99, if I had to choose a favorite year in Star Wars in the 90s, I think I might have to go with 95. It's a pretty crazy. And
yes, mine would be 96, because I didn't start picking this stuff up until 96. So
yeah. I guess 95 is like really kind of that first like huge push, and then you kind of feel that throughout the rest of the 90s. So Jeff, thanks so much for joining us for this episode. It was great to hear your stories about picking up these Power of the Force figures, and for you to be able to kind of share some of your knowledge of that time with us. So definitely appreciate you coming on to do the show.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and like I said, I really enjoyed your previous ones, and to be able to come on here and comment about this year, a lot of fun. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So All right. Well, we're going to wrap up then. You can check out more of our shows and interact with us through our website, which is blockaderunnerpodcast.com. Please subscribe on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. And if you want to leave us a review while you're there, that'd be great. We're also on YouTube, and you can watch the show on YouTube and most of our previous episodes as well. So give us a subscribe. Click the subscribe button there, I suppose. We are on Twitter at Blockade Run. Ryan, you're on Twitter at
Brawn Dwarf, BRAWNDWARF.
Yep. And Jeff, do you want to share your Twitter handle?
Yeah, sure. At Jeff Kelts. Last name's KELTS.
Okay. So the Metal Mando is the moniker, the name, but
right, yeah.
Not the handle. Gotcha. Cool.
The Metal Mando.
The Metal Mando. Yes, love that.
Obviously, you know what my two favorite things are.
Yeah. And I think you're wearing it's like a Zeppelin.
It's a mashup of Zeppelin's first cover.
Okay.
But a Star Destroyer instead of the Zeppelin.
That's nice.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin's a big favorite band of mine. Yep.
Nice.
I like it.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks very much. We'll be back soon with more Blockade Runner podcast, and we'll be back hopefully next month with our 1996 episode. So until then, thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.